Hello again from the sea, but this time not the real sea, but more like the Bay of Berlin. Rummelsburg. I never know what it's called. I guess Rummelsburg. Back in Berlin, thought I'd continue the little project. It was good to be out of the house. 2 videos ago I kind of explained what I was doing. And now back home, filming. Interesting. This is pretty much my walking route, or a walking route that I frequent. Beautiful tree against the gray sky. Love that. Love those colors. So, of course, a little bit more skin in the game, but I already feel quite used to it now after 2 videos. It's crazy what you can do by just jumping in and getting used to it a little bit. Yeah, not gonna dwell too long on this, but I am very happy, very amazed. It's quite windy, you should feel some wind. And yeah, let's get into some sort of topic, I suppose. So, oh man, this is great. Some youngsters sailing. Sorry, the now is just taking me over. I'll try to get you a little shot here. That's kind of inspiring. Some youngins doing some sailing. That's cool. And what a beautiful weather. I had a conversation with my homie Johnson, and the conversation was about power. Now, power is a big topic. What does it even mean? And so on. But we can do a little approximation. And we started a conversation, and I have my story and history with the word and the concept of power and what I associate with it. And I think so has he. And I saw him tweet a lot about it. And so I asked him, let's have a conversation about it. So we started one. What's power and how does it appear? I think there's some sort of pipeline from power to agency to love, I would say. Love this sky and this bay. Power, agency, love. And I think power, there's of course a lot of literature on it, and it means many different things. But the way I understand it is kind of like the ability to move something else. The power, and then there's also the power, having power to and having power over. And I think power to confers more with agency, which I will get into, and power over is kind of like what I mean right now. Okay, I have power over, this tree or this bush. I can cut it down. I can form it, move it, shape it. And I think many people grow up and they don't feel they have agency. And agency is the ability to move yourself, to kind of have will and exercise it. And that is very painful. Now you feel like you can't do stuff and you need power to do stuff. And I think that is like the birthplace of the power that, as you can see, I'm connoting a bit negatively now. It doesn't have to be negative, but that's my current standpoint a little bit. I'll get around to it, but for now, that's how I would like to explain it. And so you grow up without agency, without kind of the ability to exercise your will to do stuff. And then you want to do stuff and you feel like in order to even have space to move yourself, you need power to move something else first. It's almost like you're in the middle of something and everything's like encroaching on you all the time. So you have like very little buffer, very little room to breathe. And so you always need power to like plaster yourself up and to create space around you. Kind of out of fear that you won't have agency. Kind of like an Anakin Skywalker thing. You're afraid, so you use power. I just actually rewatched Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. And I think the Anakin Skywalker storyline in episode 2 and 3 is very much like that. He feels like something's encroaching on him, or he fears it, which is the death of Padme, which he foresees, which he wants to, because he loves her so much and he's so attached to her, he wants to make sure that doesn't happen. Use power to make that space that she doesn't die. And in doing so, he buys the first offer of somebody offering him that power, which is the Emperor, and sacrifices everything else that he's worked for, the places in which he has agency, like being a great fighter pilot, being a kind Jedi, and so on and so forth. And then he buys that, commits to it, and then of course causes the death herself with his fear. And so that is, I think, how I see power appear. And in my own life, I have, for the same reasons, tried to acquire, to attain power in some sort of way. And and I've used it too, and it hasn't panned out well. Not great. And so, but in the process, what I found was some sort of agency. And agency in action feels to me like this. It's kind of like, I want to do X, or I want to go to Y, and you tell somebody, and it's kind of like without any specifics over what you want them to do. You kind of just make invitations. You make invitations to yourself as well. Of course, many people try to have power over themselves, which I think is also can be, well, let's just say not the right approach. Instead, with agency, you kind of just make invitations and you stand neutrally, I would say, instead of kind of like leaned forward into a pushy situation. You stand neutrally in cool, some cool rickshaws, big rickshaws, never seen that. You make these invitations, you kind of state what you want towards yourself. First, maybe you even identify what you want, which isn't always obvious. And then you kind of just see what happens. And it's kind of like, then you also assume that the people around you have agency. Because if they have agency, they can voluntarily react to your invitation, right? And so in between two, let's say, agentic people, which some people are kind of by birth, I think not everybody grows up in this encroached state, lusting for power, but certainly some do. I would not be surprised if some of the people who have power as a job, let's say politicians, are kind of living out a childhood thing. I mean, most of us are probably, and this constant just recreating the battle over and over, trying to gain power seems to be a bit like that. But anyway, if you have agency, you can, that's kind of a trust in the world. And you can just say what you want, and then you can just see how it resonates with others. And then you kind of create these little cool collaborative playgrounds where one person makes an invitation and the other one resonates with it. And then they're like, okay, so what do you want to do? And then it's kind of like an easy, voluntary endeavor. And I think that is the stuff that like great sales and great products and great collaborations and great art is made of. I think so. I hope so. It's certainly what I aspire to. And I think the third part is love. And what I mean by that is you can kind of, if power is making the bare necessities happen, and agency is some sort of friendship with many things and beings and situations, then love is something like scanning for, with agency, scanning for the highest possible vibration and like doing the right thing. I guess in the realm of agency, just because you're doing a thing that you want or that you seem to want, I personally have to say that I seem to want many things, but my true wants are often somewhat obscure and only come out after testing. It's kind of like when you get, entrepreneurial advice or something, and then people say, yeah, just fail and repeat. Try, fail and repeat. That's something like another word of describing scanning for high resonance. And that also relates to doing what works, last video. And so I think that's love. That's kind of like love as high resonance, and then doing the things and trying to find the spots in the earth where the metal detector that's looking for treasure is vibrating. And then when you find that, you go all in. And lastly, to power, because in my life, personally, having cultivated a certain bit of this through line of from power to agency to love, a certain bit, not a playthrough, not at the credits yet, but power is returning for me as kind of like a pleasant sort of possibility of making things a bit more fun and exciting, voluntarily. It feels like power is becoming more of a rising tide that lifts all boats. Power, not power over, maybe a little bit of power over when people enjoy it, for the enjoyment of others, much like maybe a roller coaster would be. You voluntarily get on a roller coaster to get tumbled around a bit, and sometimes you want like somebody to tumble you around a little bit. Like, I think of a good sales pitch or something. If you want something and then somebody sells it to you in a very nice way, you're gonna have a great time. And for me, there's also a sexual connotation where it can be really fun to be seduced well by somebody, and there's a bit of power and a bit of tumbling involved, but only very gently and only with consent, so to speak. And in that way I see power coming back after having kind of tried to remove it from my life because I played a little bit too much power. And for me now, people who play power very actively and obviously, they just sound like they're yelling a lot instead of, you know, just stating the same ask calmly. And if I'm freaking out and if I'm afraid, which happens to me sometimes, and I talk to somebody and I'm trying to make something happen and I use power and I'm really like freaking out and yelling, and it usually isn't the right way as far as I'm concerned. So trying to find the ways to do these things with love and inviting you and everybody to do the same. Curious what you think. Talk to you soon.